Welcome back. In part 2 of this video, we're going to focus on some digital coloring techniques. Part 1 focused on using a series of lines to go ahead and create this environmental composition. Part 2 is all about the color. So I'll start off with a base color that I'm going to use. There's a lot of green within this environment, the grass, the trees, etc. So that's helping me kind of arrive at the color choice that I want to apply for my base. And I can always tweak this color later on. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to add to my selection using the Magic Wand tool. And with the Magic Wand tool, I have my tolerance set to 66. I have Sample All Layers selected. And I'm going to select all of the foreground rocks. And I'll hit Command J, that jumps the selections to their own layer. Command U. And I'm going to, first of all, make this a little bit darker. Kind of give it a bluish cast. I'm always going to go back to this base color layer to derive my other colors. So in this case, I'm going to switch now to the lasso tool to select the skull. Command J, Command U. I'm going to desaturate that. We'll do a grayscale check later on. All right, so now let's focus on the buildings. Go back to the base layer, Command J, Command U. And I'm going to make this building, this is where I want people's eyes to go, so I'm going to make that the lightest element on the page. Light does not have to be white, just has to be lighter than everything else. I'm going to select the roof. And I'll select the door. We'll give it a very saturated color for the door. There we go. Of course, we want some bricks for the smokestack. This is something I added after the camera went off. Just went back and I made a few additional tweaks. So if you're doing a quick analysis and saying, well, this doesn't look exactly like what you drew, you would be correct. I did make a few little mods, but they were very tiny mods. Nothing super crazy, just things that I felt like could be tweaked a bit. Okay, so we've got that. Let's tackle this house right here. And this is again a case where I might need to use something more precise, so I'll use my pen tool. I'll just focus on this first edge here. If you haven't really used the pen tool before, it's a really, really good tool and it allows you to make precise selections. I'm going a little bit fast on this, but if you're trying to select around a curved surface, the pen tool gives you that precision. So what I'm doing now is I've made a path. I'm going to convert that path to a selection. I'll just keep the defaults. Command J, Command U. I'll maybe mute the brown a little bit. Go back to the pen tool over here. And the only reason I'm switching to the pen tool in this case is because I know I've got some gaps in my line work that I don't want to close. So you don't always have to close your lines. It does make coloring a lot better, but this gives it a much more organic look. So Command J. This time I'm going to sample this color and I'm just going to lighten it up a little bit because I want my light source to be coming from the right. So the side that's on the right will receive more light. And I'm just going to repeat this process of making selections, going back to the base layer, and picking color choices that I think, you know, would work. So in this case, we'll have a door, might have a window, and this area right here. Oh, so let me show you a really cool trick. This has got obviously some gaps, and obviously there's things that need to be cleaned up, but I'm just feeling too lazy to do that. So instead, I'll just select the whole enchilada. And then add that to a selection. Go to the layer that contains that face and just make it white. So you can quickly select something that has a lot of closed gaps. If they're all going to be one color, you can select it much faster. So let's now look at these trees, and I'm going to make my selections a little bit sloppy here using the lasso tool. Command J, Command U, desat. Kind of give them a dark, a little bit more of a bluish value. All right, so far so good. Let's take a look and see what I can tackle next. Stairs are going to be interesting because there's a lot of things that I have to do with that. So why don't we just start off by doing it like this? I could use the pen tool. I'm going to try to use the lasso tool in as much as I can, and I'm just going to divide this into sections. I'm not going to be super concerned if my selections aren't absolutely precise. But again, holding down the shift key, adding to my selections, and then wherever I have an enclosed area, I'm just going to shift to the magic wand tool, right? So in the areas that I have gaps, can't do that. But take advantage of the tools. Oh, there's a gap there, so I can't do that. So I'm alternating between the magic wand tool, using that for the areas that are fully enclosed. Whoops, can't do that. So you have a choice here. You know, if you want to, enclose all of your lines, and make sure that they're all fully closed, that can save you some time. I think I was a little bit less precise with this. We'll give it a little bit of a bluish tint. And let's tackle all of these rocks. So these are known as color flats. I haven't done anything with regards to highlights or shading. But what I am keeping in mind is I want a lot of greens and blues. Because I think they'll complement some of the warm colors that I have for the main cabin. If you're using a lot of cool colors, you need to have some warm colors to offset that. And you don't have to use every single color in the rainbow just because you can. You can kind of limit your color palette too. So here's a tree, Command J, drop the saturation, and then just clean up. There's a little gap over here. Now let's select the other parts of this tree. Then whatever gaps you don't fill, you can just come back in with your brush tool. All right, so far so good. You can see the majority of it's still green. Here, I've got a path. Again, not super precise. And that's okay. Command J, Command U. Let's adjust this to make it a lighter value. And while we're at it, let's just do a grayscale check. So the grayscale check is basically I've assigned a keyboard shortcut, in this case Command Y. And what that does is, I'll just show you how I've got it set up. I've got it to where under Device to Simulate, I choose Working Gray. This allows me to see my contrast. So I can see that I have a lot of mid-tone values. These are like mid-grays. They're not so dark, they're not so light. This is pretty much dominated by a lot of mid-tone values. There's a few light values here that are in the cabin. But I want to create some areas that are going to be darker, to give it some good contrast. And so I'll periodically do that check just to make sure that everything is on the up and up. Unrelated, I have a little bit of a tickle in my throat. I think I had Omicron. Well, I know I had Omicron a couple days ago. I'm feeling better, but it just kicked my butt, for about 12 hours or so. And just had to power down and rest. Otherwise, I would have been more prompt with making more videos, but sometimes the body just needs to rest. But I am feeling a lot better now. Okay, so I've got the greens here. I'm gonna use my brush for this part right here. Sometimes it's just faster. All right, and let's just put some light in this cabin. And let's now select everything else. So you can see that with my magic wand tool selected, it's still selecting the trees and everything else. Now, is that going to be a problem? Actually, it turns out it's not going to be, because all of the other objects, those colors exist on their own layer. So watch, if I hit Command J and change the color of the sky, it doesn't affect any of the tree selections because the evergreen trees are already on their own layer. So I have an option here of making this really light to bring in some more light values in, which I'll more than likely do. And the reason for that is that because I have a lot of midtones for these colors that are already laid down, adding some light colors kind of offsets it, gives it a little bit more balance. Plus, I have really big areas of dark values like black, right? That's going to be my other end of the value range spectrum. You've got black, and you move all the way from black up to dark gray, mid gray, light gray, white, right? So you want to make sure that your drawings read in just simply black and white, where you have a value representation there between black and white. So that's why I added those black fills. All right, so these are all my color flats, now I can go ahead and start thinking about how I want the light to affect this scene. And I can also, we just do this too. Sometimes you don't have to have lines to represent objects that are there too. So if I wanted to throw in, say some evergreens that are in the background here, Command J, Command U, there's just a hint of some trees that are off in the distance. That just gives your scene a little bit more depth. So that way you're not just stopping at the midground. So we've got foreground, which are the rocks that are really close to us. We've got the midground area, which is like the skull, all the way to, there's this zone right here. And then you've got the background here. But now we've got like an extreme background. So that's giving us more of a sense of depth. All right, so let's tackle some of the areas where the sun don't shine. So right over here, this rock is going to be obscured. And I'm going to make my shadows kind of conform to the texture of the grass. So Command J, Command U. Kind of make that area a little bit darker, make it a little bit less saturated. And I'll do the same thing over here. Command J, Command U. So that gives us a little bit of leeway. We've got this large stone. Let's see where all the blue is for the stone. Where's the staircase? The staircase. If you're trying to find the specific layer, pro tip, right click, boom, takes you right there. So let's see, stone's going to have some kind of irregular shape. It's basically going to obscure all of this stuff. Command J, Command U. That's going to be ensconced in shadow. And don't worry, I didn't forget this area over here. And J, Command U. And now let's address the rocks that are right over here. These rocks are actually being covered by the big rock. Command J, Command U. Let's do our grayscale check to see how things are looking. So now we have some light grays, some medium grays, some dark grays, and some black. So already we're starting to look a lot better. All right, let's look at our evergreen trees. Whoops. Let's see where our good old evergreen trees are. They're over here. So everything on the right is going to be ensconced in shadow. Command J, Command U. And let's look at our cabin in the woods. So this area right here, since the structure is somewhat rounded, Command J, Command U, that's going to be a little bit dark. We'll get the top area here too. Command J, Command U. And then underneath the tree, there are going to be sections, patches, which are going to be dark. Command J, Command U. Oh, did I get the right one? Nope, that was a skull, so I was on the wrong layer. Ruh-roh. There's a tree layer. Command J, Command U. And let's get the trunk while we're at it. Now hopefully this demo isn't totally putting everyone to sleep, but the idea here is that you want to think about, the light and dark values. And that really makes your colors just stand out a lot more, right? And with this approach, this is again a technique that I use. Doesn't mean you have to do it exactly this way, but I find that it just makes the process go a little bit faster. And I know that it's not always about speed, but sometimes it is, right? So you just have to kind of determine what makes the most sense for you. And kind of just honor that. All right, so we now have our shaded areas, right? I guess one could make the argument that maybe these trees over here could probably use a little bit of that. So sure, we'll just do that. Command J, Command U. Alrighty, so we've got that in. Let's go ahead now and add our highlights. So here's what I'll do on the highlights. I want to think about the most intense values here. The sun's coming from the right. Let's just go ahead and be bold and add some white. And these are our most intense areas where the light is just hitting it hard. You'll see that the white just opens up. Just it gives it that pop of contrast. And also balances that tonal range a little bit more. Okay, so now we have some highlights. Now we can go back to, now I've got, you know, I'm going to just label layer 55 as highlights. And if I don't have any need for making precise selections, I can take all of these individual layers that I have here, you know, group them all together, and I can merge them. So basically this contains all of my you know, color information up until this point. And this is just going to make things easier for when I want to add some highlights. That are going to be like that, you know, the lighter shade of the values that I already have. Again, holding down the Shift key to add to my selection. It gives everything just a little bit more depth. And so now I've got, let's see my grayscale values. My grayscale values have got good contrast between our midground, you know, and so everything just seems to pop. We're not losing any information. That's one of the things that's really important. You want to make sure that everything that you colors stand out. Okay, so what I can do now is I can just maybe can add some clouds. I can do all that stuff. Command J, Command U. Throw a cloud in there, and guess what? That is a leading line taking us to the cabin. Staircase takes us to the cabin. The tree branches spill out, take us to the cabin. So we're using both layout as well as color to get to the focal point. Let's just do it one step better. Let's just have a little bit of smoke coming up. Command J, Command U. So now we've got another leading line taking us down towards the cabin. So, you know, as your eye is moving through the composition, whether you're aware of it or not, your eyes are kind of being directed to a place of interest. And you want to think about that both in terms of your layout, in other words, creating depth and organizing your foreground, midground, background sections, but also through the colors that you're using. All right, so let's now add some enhancements to this. Let's give it some kind of atmosphere and let's have some fun with it. So let's just go ahead and set a screen layer now. We'll use the soft round pressure opacity brush. So it's called soft round pressure opacity and flow. You can just crank that up to about 1,000, make it nice and big. And let's go ahead and, so the screen layer, what that will do, I'll just go ahead and show it to you. If I pick a non-white value, what it does is it just gives you a very subtle gradient. Very, very subtle. It just warms it up. You can probably see it better here with these trees, right? It just kind of makes those trees, makes the light seem like it's really hitting, right? Maybe over here, there's a little bit of warmth. It adds some warmth, right? So you're not just dealing with flat colors. Now you have colors that actually kind of give a sense of atmosphere, makes the area look a little bit more inviting, right? And some of that light kind of bounces off of different things in different ways. You could hit a little bit of that rock. So that's using the screen effect. I'll just label this as screen. And let's now make a new layer directly underneath this, and we'll call this one multiply. And we're going to set a multiply layer effect on that, and let's just use a purple kind of color. We're going to pick a cool color, and we're just going to come back in, and I'm going to see if purple works. Maybe I might have to use blue, I don't know. But yeah, you know what, I'll try blue. And what this will do is just kind of, first of all, it makes the midground, it gives some separation between the midground and the foreground, right? And it changes the temperature of like the area that's bathed in shadow, right? Now it gives it a cooler cast. Let's just do that with the tree too. So it kind of gives that tree a little bit more, you know, form, right? So having these cooler colors pushes the eye towards the warmer areas within the composition. And so now you can see that we're gradually moving from a cooler area. You can even touch it up over here too. And so we have an implied light source that's coming in. So this is what the final looks like, you know? So add your color flats, then think about your shaded areas, you know, first of all, establishing a light source, then think about your highlights, add your extreme highlights if that's needed, and then add a screen layer and, you know, use that to create a more complex gradient, you know, to kind of give some atmosphere to your colors. And then use a cool multiply layer to, you know, kind of push the viewer into the warm areas. And that should do it, right? So I hope you found this video to be informative. Thanks so much for being on this journey with me. I do appreciate all the feedback and all the comments and all the likes. I mean, I'm still kind of getting my feet wet with this YouTube thing. This is the 97th video that I've made for my YouTube channel. It's been a pretty exciting journey so far, hearing all the feedback and reading all the feedback that you know, folks watching this have given me. So thanks again for being a part of my journey. And I will see you in the next video.